We are now learning that, first of all, there may have been multiple tools getting in, not just what we thought, solar wind. These targeted Treasury, Commerce, State, Energy, including the agency that maintains the nuclear weapons. We're told not into classified areas, but still that agency, possibly the Pentagon. How could the government not know about this for as long as 9 months until it was alerted by a private cybersecurity firm, FireEye, recently?
Well, Andrea, this is an epic national security crisis. We have not had a cybersecurity breach like this in, as you said, a long time, maybe even in our history. And I would say that here, 72 hours after some of the initial reports, it is way too early to tell exactly how far, how wide this breach is. The United States government is going to have to conduct a far-reaching damage assessment. And damage assessments don't take hours or days, they take weeks and months. And this is going to be, I think, Andrea, a monumental task for the incoming Biden administration, because not only are they going to have to figure out what the Russians now know, but when did they begin to know it? And then trying to kick them out of our networks is going to be exceedingly difficult, because think about it, Andrea, the Russian hackers, the KGB successor organization, the intel service that did this, they're going to be reading the emails of the IT and security professionals who are responsible for kicking the Russians out. And then, not to mention, on top of that, we've got to reestablish deterrence with Russia. I think Russia believes that they had a free hand under Trump. They learned that all the way back to Russia, if you're listening. You know, how it started is Russia, if you're listening. How it's going is solar winds.
And if you take it that way, Peter, this gets back to Helsinki when, Vladimir Putin denies that he was involved in the 2016 hacking, that Russia was involved. And President Trump says, well, that was a strong denial, so I have to believe him. He would have no reason to mislead us, right? You know Vladimir Putin. You've covered him extensively.
Yeah, look, this is one of the things that takes us back to one of the fundamental questions about this presidency, one that we've never, I think, fully or adequately explained, right? Which is the nature of President Trump's relationship or approach toward President Putin. Now, this administration has taken a number of actions against Russia in the past. It has expelled diplomats. It has imposed sanctions. It has taken other actions, including selling Javelin or sending Javelin anti-tank weapons to Ukraine. But what it's not done is had the president at the top actually give voice to, these kinds of actions. He does not criticize Russia. He does not criticize Putin in any kind of fulsome way, at a public way. And he has repeatedly avoided every opportunity to discuss that kind of Russian behavior. He did it with the alleged bounties that the intelligence reports talked about that were being offered to troops in Afghanistan, or to target American troops in Afghanistan. He's done it repeatedly over the years on the election interference question. And it's always raised the question of why. Now, Robert Mueller did a long report about this. He did not find anything, he said, that would sufficiently prove a criminal conspiracy or anything like that. But what you have, I think, is a president here who has admired President Putin's strong leadership and has seen him in the most favorable light, even though most people in Washington, Republicans and Democrats alike, view President Putin as a rather extraordinary adversary of America. And this latest hack demonstrates why.
And Jeremy, officials are telling us that it's Russia, but I assume that they have to have the kind of intelligence assessment in order to give a recommendation to the president for some sort of response. What steps could that involve? It's clearly not going to happen under President Trump, as far as we can tell. So this is something that Joe Biden has said he's going to do, but how can he act when we don't even know the damage? We have to have some sort of evidence that it's Russia, or an assessment that it's Russia. And then how do you escalate without it getting out of control?
I suspect we do know, Andrea, and FireEye's report said that this activity was clearly linked, or I should say had the fingerprints of what's called APT-29, which is Advanced Persistent Threat 29, which is a set of attacks that have been linked to the Russian SVR, which is essentially their CIA, their Foreign Intelligence Service. It's one of the successors of the KGB. So I suspect we have the evidence. But I think your point, Andrea, is we don't yet fully know the extent of the damage. We don't know whether this is a broad espionage campaign to learn our capabilities, our plans, our intentions, or whether or not this was Russia lying in wait to disrupt or in some ways destroy our infrastructure in the event of some conflict with us. And I think, again, the key challenge for the Biden team is going to be how do we reestablish deterrence with Russia? What do we do? Because obviously we don't want to have a full-scale military conflict with Russia. There are areas we have to cooperate with them on climate change, on potentially an Iran follow-on deal. But yet we have to establish deterrence. We have to reinvigorate the NATO military alliance between the United States and our transatlantic allies. And we've got to show Russia that there are going to be real costs, real significant costs for their attack. Again, I think Trump requested cyber hacking from Russia. He welcomed it. He benefited from it, and I think he's rewarded it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.